Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's a Ukrainian show on Pod TV. My name is Sasha Star, and my guests today are Dr. Jonathan Lockwood. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Thank you, Sasha. Glad to be here as always.
Great to have you as always. And Ivan Kucherenko, our man in Kiev. Welcome to the show, Ivan.
Hello, Sasha. Hello, Jonathan. Glad to be here today with you.
So you have a clip for us to look at. Let's.
Sure. Clip with a magnificent British actor, Stephen Fry. So we can start with it.
On top of everything that's going on in our own lives, we choose what else is worth our attention. Is someone else's war worth paying attention to? What if their aggressor is also a danger to your country? Is a dictatorship halfway around the world worth paying attention to? And what if their nuclear missiles could potentially reach your home? Should you go to a rally to demand government attention to a global issue? Or just take your child to the park to spend some time together? Are you going to buy another toy for your own child? Or for the refugee's child? But many of us can find our own path. Instead of being a bystander of events, we can analyze them, learn, and bounce back stronger. And after all, we can choose to be a better human.
That is an outstanding message.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
And it reminds me of what the late C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, great friend of J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Lord of the Rings. C.S. Lewis observed that about free will, how God essentially gave all human beings free will, the power to choose between being good or being evil. Because he said, if a person is free to be good, he or she is also free to be evil. Free will is what makes evil possible. So we always have the power to choose. And we are seeing that fully illustrated in the Russian-Ukrainian war. The Russian leadership, if not necessarily the Russian people as a whole, have chosen to follow the path of evil. They have chosen to follow the path of power. The Russian leadership, especially Putin, wants not only complete control over Ukraine, he wants the restoration of the Russian Empire, and God only knows how much evil that would bring to the rest of the world. And that reinforces that speaker's point. He has made an excellent point. And so, in fact, it also reminds me of a message by an organization. I don't know if it still exists. It's sponsored by the United Nations, called Save the Children. And the central message is, you can't save the whole world, but you can save a piece of it.
Very interesting. Actually, the way the war is playing out in social media, or even in nations right now, it seems to me that there is almost no war because there is no breakthroughs on the other side. It's some attacks a little bit as Russians, they would take over 100 meters, and next day Ukrainians will take back 200 meters. And
starts to remind you of World War I, the trench warfare in World War I.
Yeah, exactly. So in that sense, I think it would be quite logical to have some. Frankly, I was always against it, but under these circumstances, probably it's a viable resolution to this. Just stay on the front lines, which separates both sides. Just stay there, so it would remind Korean truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the best one, but it's not the worst one either. So it's one of the possibilities. On the other hand, I'm getting confused, but I think I'm not the only one. That let's play back a couple of weeks ago. Trump is approaching Zelensky to come over to Washington to discuss something so important that cannot be discussed over the phone. So one could think, well, maybe it's Tomahawk missiles or maybe something else important. Okay, so Zelensky take all his stuff and flying over
He's
thousands of
wearing a good suit. He's
yes,
all dressed for you. He's looking for oh, maybe President Trump is willing to make a good deal, a deal that's good for Ukraine. So you
so
can't
he's arriving, he's there.
No luck. No luck.
Dang.
But you see, what we are missing something, a very important part. There was a call between Putin and Trump a day before Zelensky's arrival. We don't know what's been discussed on that phone call, and we don't know what was discussed on that meeting that Trump invited Zelensky to fly thousands of miles to Washington.
Two unknowns.
So what was so important that Trump wanted to tell Zelensky that he couldn't tell over the phone? Or maybe it was an original idea, but it was all thrown away by a phone call from Putin to Trump a day before, right? So we don't know what to make it now. There's some conflicting situation about what's happened on Friday between Trump and Zelensky. There are some accounts that Trump was screaming, almost getting onto the level of February Oval Office meeting. There are some other accounts that it was very high energy, very charged meeting. They were very frank to each other. So I don't know really what to make of it. I'm not.
Yeah, you and I are in the same position here. We're looking at this as saying, okay, it looks like both parties both the Ukraine and the United States are playing their cards very close to the vest. They are learning not to telegraph their moves to the other side, and so they have more they have in theory more freedom to be frank with each other and discuss ideas without worrying about what everyone else is going to say. So that is part of it.
Jonathan, I would like to mention something. Purely from the United States point of view. I'm not talking about Trump point of view, but United States. Okay, so situation is that Europeans paying all the money to acquire weapons, they're paying to a special fund which is established by Donald Trump and which he personally administers that. So if billions of dollars are coming to that fund, it's almost like Trump's money because he can direct where and when he chooses to do it. That's number one. So let's imagine that unlike other real estate developers, Trump is a very honest person and he will never touch this money for his personal use or something.
Why should he?
Yeah, he's a multi-billionaire. He's sitting on hundreds of billions of dollars. Why he needs any of these funds? For some reason, he designed it that way. You can only guess why. However, so this is now a beautiful situation for America because America now can produce all kinds of weapons that Europeans are paying for. So we are talking about tens of billions of dollars. America is employing people, they're producing weapons, the contractors and all the companies involved are doing extremely well. Trump is doing okay, mildly saying. So what's wrong with this model? And that could go on for several months, maybe even longer. Why would Trump change or do detriment of interests of America, American weapons manufacturers, the workers, and so on? Jonathan, would like to hear what is there.
That it's right now the situation when you mix that action in with President Trump's other economic actions, such as the tax cuts and such as deregulation and other things, which are designed in the longer run, at least in theory, to stimulate economic growth. And unfortunately, right now, one of the biggest engines of American economic production is its military production. Its ability to make and sell weapons that other countries want. And so right now, so he's taking the line of least resistance on that, and trying to play that to America's advantage, because after all, his philosophy is America first. So from that perspective, if Ukraine, it now becomes, since Ukraine is obviously observing the same process, what Zelensky is obviously trying to do is to present to President Trump in the United States a deal, his version of the art of the deal, where by strengthening Ukraine, Ukraine becomes a better customer of American military potential, and Ukraine becomes essentially the strongest military power within NATO itself, most experience. It can serve as an eastern bulwark against any future Russian aggression. And by doing that, Zelensky has the opportunity to make Ukraine the first among equals, shall we say, in the NATO alliance. And so it's a very complicated dance. I can't, because
No, Jonathan, I was trying to make it simpler than complicated. I was asking you from the point of view of America only. Forget about Ukraine, Russia, and Europe, and everybody else. America is sitting on at least several months' worth of enormous military production of all kinds of weapons, guaranteed sale, guaranteed money coming in. America never, ever in its history was sitting on such a gold mine. Why to disrupt it? That's my question. Forget about what our Ukrainians trying to do or anybody else.
Why would they? Why would they want to disrupt it? As far as I can tell, he isn't really going to disrupt it, and that he basically is going to let this play out to where United States has a favorable economic balance, and in the short term, it's going to be because of its production of military weaponry. In the longer term, obviously, President Trump and his advisors are planning on the increased domestic production of the United States, increased manufacturing, altering its economy, getting rid of excessive government.
Wait. Maybe that will all materialize anyway.
Yes.
But this military gold mine is there for a limited time only, for a few months, maybe a year and a half or something. It's not like for 10 years or 25 years.
Yeah.
It's a limited time. So why he wouldn't allow America and American weapon manufacturers to get the best out of it, the most out of it? Why would he disrupt it by stupid call with Putin and agreeing on a horrible meeting in Budapest, which, by the way, will not even take place? Why would he do it? Poland already announced that if the Putin's plane will fly over Polish airspace, they will land it and arrest Putin and will send him to Hague. So why do all these things? What Trump gaining out of it? Rubio is trying to save his face from the humiliation, yet another one by Putin. And how does it go?
I can answer your question.
Let Ivan chime in on this.
From one point, there is a great possibility for United States, for Donald Trump and his people who are sponsors of the Republican Party, actually, to earn money on Russia-Ukraine war by selling weapons, not giving weapons to Ukraine, but selling weapons to NATO, for European countries to pay for it and give those weapons to Ukraine. This scheme is working, and the those lobby of weapon manufacturers probably are happy with it. From other part, there is a lobby of energy companies like ExxonMobil and other great energy companies who obviously lost a lot of money in Russia when Russia started full-scale invasion to Ukraine, and all their mutual contracts and businesses were stopped. Russia got over the sanctions, and those companies had to exit Russian market. Their businesses in Russia were nationalized by Russian authorities, so they've lost a lot of money. And from the third part, there is Putin, who really good knows Trump and his mindset. He knows that Trump is businessman. He knows that Trump is a real estate businessman, first of all. And he is drawing great business opportunities for Donald Trump and his energy lobby, his real estate partners, that, hey, Donald, let's stop this war. You don't need Ukraine at all. Yeah, just left Ukraine alone with their problems. Lift sanctions, and we will do great business in Russia together. Your energy companies can return to Russia. We will give them back those assets which were analyzed. We will build a tunnel over the under the sea to connect Alaska with Kamchatka. Despite there are no roads in Kamchatka, it would be a one-way tunnel, and it will be actually a Trojan tunnel. To it will help
Trojan
not to
horse.
make business with Russia, but to let Russian tanks easily drive to Alaska in future case. So it's Donald Trump, after those phone calls with Putin, he actually teleports from the reality in which Russia can take Avdiivka for several years, and they can't capture all the Donetsk region, though Putin promised Trump that he will capture all Donetsk region till the November. Now they're moving those plans to 2026. He transfers to reality in which he is making great business deals with Russia, drilling Russian oil, getting his energy fellows back to Russia, and they get back those money they lost on Russian market. They're building a great big fantastic tunnel over the sea, under the sea, to Russia, which he was talking to Zelensky on the meeting. It's blowing my mind to invite president of country which has been invaded by Russia to Oval Office and tell him about how he is dreaming about building this great tunnel. Actually, if remember that video which was removed from their meeting on Alaska with Putin, when he clapped to Putin. Yeah, besides American soldiers being on knees and getting that red carpet, he was clapping Putin because Putin is great leader for him. He can do great business with Putin in Russia, and the only problem between him and Putin doing all that great business is Zelensky. And this every time he is talking with Putin, every time his representative Vitkov is flying to Moscow and speaking with Putin for 5 hours instead of 15 minutes, he transfers from the reality in which Russia is actually not winning this war, in which Russia can't capture Ukraine, in which Russian economy is getting down, and actually it can collapse in near future to the reality where he's building great bright business projects with Putin. They are creating that tunnel under the sea to Russia and all that bullshit. So that's the answer, actually.
I'd like to mention something about this tunnel. I understand why Putin is interested to build this tunnel, because there will be billions of dollars that will be all given away to his friends, and so it will be corruption 001 easily.
Oh, yeah.
And a nice tunnel for Russian tanks, actually.
Yeah, exactly. Basically, President Putin is offering to sell President Trump a 21st century version of the Brooklyn Bridge. Build us an easy bridge by which we may invade your country, or at least Alaska, which is all we're really interested in.
But the thing is that to go from Alaska, okay, I never been in Alaska, but I can imagine what it is like. So, okay, so there's the entrance.
It's cold.
Okay, you're going there. And on the other hand, you're coming out, there are two variations. One is Kamchatka and another one is Chukotka. Now, all these places are extremely inhospitable, cold, no roads, no infrastructure, real nothing. So for
Russian tanks don't need roads. Sasha, no, Russian tanks don't need roads. I have recently seen a great comparison of Russian tanks, old Soviet tanks actually, T-64 and Leopard 1. And the problem is that Russian tanks are extremely good on dirt, and German tanks, they can't pass the dirt. Actually, their tracks are not made for dirt, but they are made for great paved roads, autobahns. And the answer why that happened is that German built those tanks when they expected of invading Soviet Union to the Western Germany and to Europe, and they expected that those tanks will actually drive good German roads.
Yeah, they weren't expecting to invade the Soviet Union in response to a Soviet.
Yeah. So sorry.
I finish for Trump, the allure of building such a tunnel is that he can use it to send through this tunnel to Russia all illegal immigrants. So he can, and through tunnels, they will reappear in Russia. Can you imagine Honduras people, all the Latin Americans, they're arriving at -50, no roads, no food, no nothing. You know?
That'll teach them to illegally immigrate to the United States.
So I understand the Trump's
and then via Belarus they will try to get to Europe. Actually, there is another way of hybrid attacks which Russia is using by making illegal immigrants flew to Europe over the Belarus, and their border is Poland.
How much Poland for these poor immigrants? Because Poland say once somebody will even try to cross the border, he will be killed right there without any warnings, without anything. That's why there is no movement. They're coming to the border. They're going back and forth around this border, and then they're all being flown back to where they came from, to Syria, to Africa, to wherever. So there is no luck on the Polish border. They fortified it, they make it almost impregnable. And this is what they're trying to do in Baltic states. That's why maybe that's the only reason why Russians will try to actually attack the Baltic states, if not Poland, just so they will not build all these structures the way Poland did. Now, coming back to Trump, so Rubio was supposed to meet Lavrov this Thursday. The meeting has been canceled because they're so much apart of the way how they see the next moves. There is nothing to discuss even.
Right.
So is Trump will take upon himself to fly to be again humiliated in Budapest? I
I think
don't think so.
burned once, twice shy.
I think so. Yeah, Trump is not going to do it. So
And
then,
Trump wants to be seen as backing a winner. And right now, Ukraine is, based on the correlation of forces that we have seen, Ukraine is in fact winning. They are winning slowly. They are winning methodically by continuing to attack Russia's logistical and oil and economic infrastructure and its war machine. They are continuing to do that, and it is having a cumulative effect. And so I think we will see in the closing months of 2025, we will see a virtual collapse of the Russian offensive efforts against Ukraine, thus opening an opportunity for a Ukrainian counterstroke. Just
so
my
does
position.
it mean that now tomahawks are on the table again? Ivan, what do you think?
That would be I if it changed once, it can change again. The only constant in this whole equation is change, the shifting positions behind the scenes. President Trump can very well change his mind again and say, okay, let's put those, President Zelensky, let's put those tomahawks back on the table. What are your terms? What do you want? And then it's up to Zelensky to strike a clever deal with President Trump.
I think that coming back to that my idea about those two realities which President Trump appears from time to time, one of those realities is actually wrong. It's fake reality, yeah, because the one reality is what we see.
Yes.
Yeah, according to the real data, according to the intelligence, according to everything, and Donald Trump obviously has access to all that information. And
Yes.
other reality appears only the time when President Trump speaks with Putin, or his Vychkov is speaking with the Putin, and this obviously is a fake reality because
Right.
it can't exist in the modern world. Yeah, you cannot do business projects with Hitler. Actually, let's come back to the
very good analogy.
the Second World War and imagine that President Roosevelt is discussing possible business projects with Adolf Hitler and how they built a great bridge from occupied France to Great Britain, for instance. Like
Well, recall
project.
Adolf Hitler respected, according to many accounts, respected the British Empire and respected Great Britain, and he wanted to try and cut deals with Great Britain. And the leaders of Great Britain basically told him in no uncertain terms, no deals. We are not going to make it.
I
Yeah.
have a very important question. Why British and later Americans and Soviets, they would not even entertain the idea of Germany sort of getting out of war, on maybe recognizing probably the loss of war or so on, some consequences probably. It hasn't been even discussed. The decision was to take advantage of the situation, defeat completely Germany.
It could not be allowed to exist.
Right. Why West is not taking the same approach to Russia, which Russia has been historically the foe of a free world, threatening use of nuclear weapons and so on. And right now, thanks to heroic Ukrainian army, West can put Putin on his knees and perhaps get rid of him. Why the West is not taking that simple approach?
Because the population of the West, particularly the United States, has not yet been radicalized enough, nor have they been nor has the war in Ukraine become real enough to the people of America to the point where they would be willing to essentially adopt the attitude of Russia delenda est. Russia must be destroyed. They are not anywhere close to that attitude.
What about
Europe? Now, Europe could, because Europe has more intimate experience with being invaded and with threat of invasion. European nations, NATO, the European members of NATO, could be because they recognize that they are next if Ukraine is defeated. So they have a vested self-interest in seeing Russia defeated decisively enough that Russia is at the least unable to undertake future offensive operations against any member of NATO for the foreseeable future, or hopefully for at least the next few decades, to allow Ukraine and its European NATO allies to become strong enough to permanently deter or discourage a Russian invasion. Because Russia is going to have its own problems very shortly. It's already experiencing them with China, its so-called ally. China has grievances, historical grievances against Russia, because there are territories in the east that China has been laying claim to. Some of their maps are showing these eastern territories of Russia are rightfully belong to China. So Russia is going to have its own problems once this war ends with its own so-called ally China. And so there's more to this. This is very, very complicated, but I would say that right now the main thing that needs to be focused upon is the decisive military defeat of Russia in this Ukrainian war. And the decisive element is a Ukrainian counteroffensive. Once the Russian offensive capability has been exhausted, launch a decisive counteroffensive. I argue that Crimea is the decisive point. That will be the one that convinces Russia, okay, the war is lost, let's declare victory and go home.
But now in negotiations, Crimea is not taking the central place because it's now occupied by Russians. And if the war would continue, it will be sooner or later occupied by Ukrainians. However, the central question of all these negotiations is the Donbass, especially this agglomeration from Slavyansk to Kramatorsk or so on, because if that would be given to Putin as he demands, then it opens completely his way to attack Kyiv. There's no
you're quite, which is precisely what, and the Ukrainians fully realize this. They are not going to give up the central bulwark of their defensive line and open the way to an invasion, to an exploitation by the Russian military, as debilitated as it might be, even by that point, to open a way for military invasion of the rest of Ukraine. So there is that, and the Ukrainians are going to stay in that defensive line, and they are going to continue to exhaust the Russian capability for engaging in offensive operations. But the weaker they become, the greater the opportunity that it will be presented to Ukraine to undertake that decisive counteroffensive with whatever strategic reserves they have created to retake the Crimea.
Why that time and resources are being spent on discussion of the bridge between Alaska and Kamchatka or Chukotka or both of them, when there is one issue that can be resolved in a minute and a half? Are you planning to insist that you want to take parts of Donbass that you don't control today? Are you or you are not? That's the spell, the end of any negotiations, because when Russians will open their bloody mouths and say, we want a whole Donbass. Finish. There is nothing to discuss. There is no bridge between Kamchatka and Alaska. There is nothing to discuss. Okay, right. Now, Russians say, no, we're not interested in them. Okay, we're not going to take anything. Everything is yours. Ukraine, come in, take Donbass, take Zaporizhia, take everything. Is that possible? No. If possible, send telegram and spell exactly that, and we will get back to you, idiots.
Well, that's the difference between a rational actor model and a reality model. Okay, in the rational actor model, you assume that people that nations are going to act in their own, logically going to act in their own best self-interest. That has been a predominant model in American political science circles, in national security theory, that ultimately all nations logically act in their own best self-interest. Unfortunately, I counterpose to that what Einstein once said. As you recall, we've mentioned this more than once. The only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity. And I am not so sure about the universe. So in this case, history, basically, Sasha, you can go back examining human history and the history of war as far back as you like. And you can always find examples in every war, not just the wars of the 20th century, where nations have acted irrationally against their own best self-interest. Unfortunately, the only way you only way you discover this irrationality is after the fact, when you look back and you say, well, what if we had done this instead of this? I'll give you one quick classic example before we pass this back to you. During the Korean War, when the United States launched its Incheon counteroffensive, and they were on the offensive, driving up through, they were taking North Korea, they were driving towards the Chinese border, and MacArthur, deciding that he was his own best advisor, he was threatening the Chinese border. He was advancing right up to the Chinese border, and the Chinese were getting excited. They were getting very irritated. If you look at a map of North Korea, had MacArthur decided to take some sense and advanced up to Pyongyang, take the capital of Pyongyang, and you notice that is the narrowest part of the North Korean peninsula. It is the narrowest neck. MacArthur could have advanced up to that line, formed a solid defensive line across the neck of that peninsula. Don't bother with the rest of North Korea. That's north of that line. That would in effect have become a demilitarized zone between China and the rest of the United Nations forces that would have occupied Pyongyang, unified the rest of Korea under South Korean rule, and have a unified Korea in that thing. You could, looking back with the benefit of hindsight, yes, that would have been a better choice, but that was assuming rational actors. You could not have predicted that MacArthur had, in retrospect, MacArthur had done something very stupid by advancing all the way to China. Now, why didn't he do that? Well, he was letting his own ego govern his actions, not national self-interest, not the interests of other nations. So I would suggest that as many irrational actions as we can see right now in the Russian-Ukrainian war, this is nothing new. All actors in all wars often act in ways that are counter to not only to their own best interests, but to the interests of humanity in general. So I would say we can select it from our perspective, the perspective of the three of us. The most logical outcome, the most beneficial outcome, is a Russian defeat, which forces them to retreat back to those pre-war borders, and so that Ukraine becomes a solid actor, a solid bulwark for the European alliance. So while that is logical, it does not mean that other actors are going to be willing to follow that. Zelensky certainly would like to see that. I'm sure he would like to see the outcome that I've just described.
And why would Europe refuse to see that? Why would Europe disagree to see that?
Why? Yeah, because they think they are perceiving right now. They are probably perceiving that the price is too high to pay, and I would argue against that. It is possible to persuade behind the scenes with sufficient logic and examples and guarantees of support and economic support to persuade the European allies that creating a strong bulwark in the form of a strong and independent Ukraine that eventually could be integrated into the NATO alliance and the European Union is the best long-term course of action. However, the trick is persuading the necessary parties of the desirability of that logical course of action. Logic has not been always the governing principle in human affairs.
John, but you don't see the end of war in Ukraine which in my opinion is not going to happen anytime soon. But let's imagine that Trump arranged for the ceasefire on the front lines where they are right now, and then do something else. Like what he's done in Israel. He released the hostages, but that's it. There is no peace. There is absolutely nothing. So he had this big party of 20 leaders signing some kind of paper that there are no obligation on any party to do anything. There was
Right.
all television production.
It's
And there is
symbolic.
no peace. And it's even worse than it was before, minus hostages. That's a great thing what happened. But that all opens for Israel now. They can attack Hamas day and night, and not worrying about maiming or killing their own hostages or so on.
Yeah.
That's one story. Another story is in Ukraine. As I said before, U.S. was the main beneficiary of the war to continue. Now, Trump, because of the Nobel Peace Prize, just because of that bloody $1 million, Trump is derailing all states, Europe, Ukraine, and bailing out Putin, where he should die any moment. Either he will be killed or he will get
Succumb to
cancer, natural causes, just anything, or one of the his generals will just break his head in two parts or something like that. So
yeah, be
anyway,
careful. Yeah, be careful, Sasha. If you see, just as in World War II, this one alternate history novel postulate called Fox on the Rhine postulated, what if Hitler had been assassinated, but his replacement was even worse, Himmler. Yeah, so, and it's a useful what they call counterfactual history. The useful alternate histories thing to teach us a lesson that be careful what you wish for. But in any case, this is an example where Putin cannot be. It's clear to the three of us, and certainly to a number of other European leaders, that Putin cannot be allowed to have his way, and so we have to regard this idea of a bridge between Russia and Alaska as a propaganda circus. It is. I regard it as a circus, as a performance. It's gee, that's nice. You're offering to sell us a 21st century version of the Brooklyn Bridge. No, thank you. But so I tend to regard that as not a serious possibility. But
John,
I think
you just mentioned Einstein, who said that the human stupidity is
it's unlimited.
Unlimited, right? So
It's infinite.
how United States government could insulate Trump from such a level of stupidity? How would that be possible?
Well, for one thing, it's his second term, and the Constitution prohibits him from getting a third term. And is he seriously interested in the third term? I think sometimes he has mentioned it or alluded to it just to irritate his political opponents and get them to react, get them to engage in hysterics and distract them. So realistically, what President Trump, given what he has gone through, President Trump wants to be remembered as a great president. He wants to be remembered as a consequential president, not an irrelevant or mediocre president, but a president with great accomplishments. And and he knows that he's operating on limited time, both realistically, existentially, because he's not immortal, but also because he honestly believes, according to a number of observers, that God spared him from assassination twice in order to fulfill God's larger purpose for his life. I can relate to that in a certain sense, because after all, about 3 years ago, God spared me from dying of cancer. And and my wife told me, Kathleen told me, this is God has spared you for a larger purpose. I said, okay, I take that seriously. And so I learned to number my days, as the Bible says. Number your days and do not do not take for granted the amount of time that God gives you on this earth. So I would say that President Trump is experiencing, I'm guessing, now mind you, I'm guessing, he's experiencing on a similar level the realization that he is not immortal and that he needs to make the maximum use of the time that he has left on this earth. He doesn't know how much he has, but nevertheless, he has to make his remaining days consequential. So that
maybe, Jonathan, just maybe God made the decision to spare Trump,
right?
For he's going to destruct Russia and Putin's regime. That's why he spared him. Trump never thought about that.
It's a possibility. That is something that his advisors would have to point out to him and says, well, Mr. President, have you considered what God's purpose for sparing your life it really is? What is the greater threat to humanity? Is Ukraine the greater threat to humanity, or is it Russia? Well, Russia has the nuclear arsenal. Russia is the one who has been brandishing its nuclear arsenal, threatening the West with threats of nuclear escalation, trying to play upon the fear of Western leaders of nuclear escalation in order to get its own way and achieve its own foreign policy goals. So if they step back and engage in serious discussion about who is the greater threat to humanity, eventually logic must prevail. So that is my estimation of what would need to occur in order for the United States to, at the bare minimum, take steps in the long term to neutralize Russia's nuclear arsenal. Now, there is the Golden Dome ostensibly is meant to achieve the neutralization of the nuclear.
20 to 30 years to build, Jonathan.
That depends on what paradigm you're using. If you're using,
there's no money. First of all, there is no money to build it. Number one. So if you will contract Chinese, please build such and such structure and finance it. Okay, but they're not going to do it. And itself, the United States has no money to build something like that.
No, I would say, I would argue that it would take a major restructuring of the U.S. defense establishment as well as the U.S. government in order to achieve the savings or the cost effectiveness in order to be able to build a reasonable a Golden Dome with initial operational capability. There's a difference between initial operational capability and full operational capability. Full operational capability means it can achieve all the objectives of being able to block, 90% or better of nuclear missiles in a first strike, thus effectively neutralizing the nuclear capabilities of your adversaries. However, initial operational capability is a significant difference. When you achieve initial operational capability, okay, the Golden Dome operates, but it can block a certain unknown percentage of opposing nuclear missiles, and you are relying upon that uncertainty to achieve deterrence. Rather than using the threat of mutually assured destruction, you are in effect saying we can neutralize a certain portion of your nuclear arsenal, and I don't think you want to really risk the existence of your own nations unless you are willing to build a comparable version of the Golden Dome for yourselves, in which case, knock yourselves out. Go ahead and try and spend all that money.
John, it's better to go then, and it's probably much cheaper, go to scenario of Dr. Strangelove when there is a dead hand. Remember? The device that kills everything once the attack has been initiated. It's Doomsday Machine.
The Doomsday Machine, yes. That concept has been addressed more than once. And certainly, I regard that as an inherently unstable and undesirable state of affairs for the long term. But again, President Ronald Reagan wanted to render nuclear weapons impotent and obsolete. And believe me, when he first voiced the concept of the Strategic Defense Initiative, the KGB, I remind you, the KGB had sent a report to Gorbachev in April 1985, as cited in the book KGB, The Inside Story by Christopher Andu and Oleg Gordievsky, a KGB defector. Apparently, according to those reports, The KGB had sent a report to Gorbachev saying that the Star Wars or SDI program would eventually be able to neutralize 90% of Soviet missiles in a first strike, and there was no way the Soviet Union could keep up with this capability. Now, did that capability really exist? No. It was a research and development initiative, not a real program to build up strategic defense. But the Russians believed it. They acted on that belief, and they bankrupted themselves in an effort to try to counter what was in effect a phantom SDI program. So
Alexander, if that system, whether it's the Power Dome system or SDI initiative or anything like this, it could destroy, as you said, up to 10%, up to 90% of incoming missiles. So 10 will still penetrate and create.
But they don't know which.
Okay.
They don't even know. Yeah.
So now, if Russians, in turn, they will build 5 times their arsenal. So 10 multiplied by 5, it will be 50% of previous quantity of missiles will penetrate and have certain damage, 5 times bigger as the perceived 10%.
At that point, and you're assuming that the Russian economy, the Russian war economy, would be capable of such a massive strategic buildup. They would very quickly exhaust their capabilities for launching such an attack. So that is why a Golden Dome, or shall we say, a miniature Golden Dome, a partially effective Golden Dome, at this stage is a much more effective use of American resources regarding nuclear weapons. My argument is, don't build any more nuclear weapons. Don't spend another dime on building more nuclear weapons. Instead, focus your efforts on first of all, maintaining the nuclear weapons that you have in peak condition so that you can use them. You know they all work. And at the same time, you build sufficiently robust defenses that will be guaranteed to neutralize an unknown proportion of your adversary's nuclear weapons. Both the Russians and the Chinese have stated that both Putin and Xi have stated that they consider the Golden Dome highly destabilizing. Why is it highly destabilizing? It's highly destabilizing to their power, not their existence, their power. Anything that neutralizes their ability to exercise leverage against the West is, yes, in their view, highly destabilizing, because they cannot count upon their nuclear arsenals anymore to successfully intimidate the West with a high degree of certainty. So that is why they regard it as highly destabilizing. Not that they are concerned about the existence of humanity. They are concerned about the existence of their leverage, their power, their leverage, their ability to intimidate. That's what the Golden Dome, in fact, kills no one. Golden Dome does not kill.
It prevents killing.
It prevents killing.
Ivan, last question to you before we finish. Ivan, you see, in this chess game where there is Europe, United States, Ukraine, Russia.
And China.
Directly China, of course. Yeah.
A multiplayer chess game.
I'm talking from the point of Ukraine. I don't think Ukraine has any leverage with China one way or another. But I think there is a weakness of Ukrainian diplomacy continue to communicate with Trump. And I'll tell you why I'm thinking this way. Because if United States took a policy of not supplying Ukraine with anything for their money, but only for European money, so Ukraine has to be in contact with Europe, because a contact directly with the United States doesn't make any advantage for Ukraine, because depends on what kind of dream last night Trump had or something like this. He can start screaming at Zelensky at any point, at any time, or so. So why to continue this very iffy contact where Ukraine is doing very well communicating with the Europeans. Europeans are doing quite well communicating with Trump. So cut off this direct contact between Trump and Zelensky. Am I missing something?
If you exclude a contact line which brings actually some rational moments to our partner, then you will bring United States headed by Donald Trump and his team directly to the to contacting only Putin, who will tell all those fairy tales to them, and in one day you may face that Donald Trump will not sell any weapons to Europeans to give them to Ukraine, or it will cut the intelligence data like it was in the beginning of this year when he wanted to make Ukraine stop this war. Actually, when he thought that Ukraine can stop this war, and it's a good strategy to stop military aid to Ukraine and intelligence data, stop providing intelligence data to Ukraine, and then this war will be stopped. Actually, it was a wrong strategy, as we've seen, because this war can be stopped only by Putin. It's only Putin desire to continue this war or to stop this war. Of course, Ukraine can stop this war if Ukraine will capitulate, actually, and accept all demands of all those crazy demands of Putin, but it will make all world collapse, because it will be a green signal for all dictators in the world that you can just do what you want, and you can attack other countries, you can grab territories, and the next target for Putin will be Europe, which obviously everyone understands, and I hope that President Trump understands. So answering your question, I really appreciate the work of Ukrainian diplomacy, of Zelensky, of Ukrainian foreign minister, because they're doing insane work. They are bringing the rational messages to the person who's influenced by fantasies of the crazy dictator. And they are doing a great job of fighting the Russian narratives and fighting those fake business opportunities, and actually tell the truth. Unfortunately, they failed last time when Zelensky and his team visited White House, because the phone conversation of Trump and Putin was too fresh. Donald Trump was still in those fairy pink illusions of doing great business projects with Russia. So when Ukrainian delegation, they brought the real maps of the situation on the battlefield, the possible targets deep inside Russia, which using the Tomahawk strikes can actually weaken the Russian economy and military potential. Donald Trump messed all those maps because there were no those great bright tunnel from Alaska to Kamchatka on them. He was still in those. He was clapping to Putin in his mind that he didn't want to hear any real facts from Zelensky and Ukrainian delegation.
What they should
obviously, that meeting was like in several days after those phone conversation. I think that it would be it could bring a better results. So my great advice is for Ukrainian delegation to plan better meetings of Zelensky.
better deals. Offer him better deals.
Yeah, and at least take a week between phone conversation with Trump and Putin in order for Trump to get some real information, but not all those unicorns and pink ponies and all that fairy tales bullshit that Putin tell him
Well,
during their phone calls.
Ukraine can actually offer Ukraine if they set their mind if they decide to set their minds to it, they can formulate a much more realistic set of economic deals and plums to offer President Trump for investment.
Well,
in
Ukraine already did. We signed those mineral deals. Why we are now not discussing the mineral deals? Ukraine signed it. It was a great issue for discussion in the beginning of this year. But then Putin said, "Hey, Donald, why do you need Ukrainian those minerals? Yeah, in Russia, we have much more rare minerals than Ukraine has. We can do those mutual projects, and you will mine all those rare minerals in Russia. You don't need Ukraine." And now Donald Trump is not talking about the mineral deal with Ukraine. Yeah. Now Ukraine is offering a drone deal to United States because Ukraine actually has great technologies in drone. Ukrainian drones are effective in Russia, but I assume that Putin will come. The next issue, Putin will come to Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth and say, "Hey, Donald, Pete, we have great Shahed drones, great Iranian drones, which are pretty effective in this war. You don't need Ukrainian drones. We have Iranian Shahed drones, and we can do a great mutual business with you and produce Shahed drones for United States."
And they were
That's just imagine that circus.
Putin will say they were very effective, not only in Ukrainian war, but in Israel. They were bombed.
Yeah.
They killed so many Israelis. How don't you like these drones?
You don't need drone deal with the Ukraine. Let's make a drone deal. It will be great. We are producing those drones in Ilabuka. We have a great factory. You're a real estate businessman. You should come to Ilabuga, see those drone factory. We have children working there, and that's a great business project because we are paying children less money than we have to pay to adults, and they're working there 24 hours, 7 days per week like slaves, and it's a great deal. We will produce very cheap drones for you, Donald. It's a great deal.
There could be also a tunnel between Kamchatka and Yelabuga. So there will be from Alaska through Kamchatka to Yelabuga, and Donald.
Well, gentlemen, I don't know what's in that coffee you've been drinking, but I think before we get too far into fantasy land.
Yeah, that's good sometimes to fantasize. Also, Ukraine. Oh, one more thing before we finish. Ukraine can offer to do a study or how they call it in geology, feasibility study on this tunnel between Alaska and Chukotka. So Ukrainians have very experienced engineers and scientists, and they can do it better and cheaper than either American or Russian experts. What do you think about that?
And China can build actually this tunnel for if dreaming of such a great collaborative project, then this tunnel will be built by Chinese, and it will be very cheap for United States.
Wait a sec, and the best thing of that is that who will provide financing for this tunnel. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, they will each put $10 trillion in it, and here is your tunnel, the dream of your life. Gentlemen, with that, indeed, we are going to finish right now.
I think we all need to go. I think we all need to go take a nap.
For sure.
We need to decompress after this show because we're having way too much fun.
Yeah, but that's the name of the game, to have
Yeah.
fun. So, gentlemen, let's have great news in the next few days, and we'll see you Friday, same time. And Slava Ukraini.
God bless America.
Героям слава. Thank you.
Yeah, God bless Canada, and God bless Ukraine, and the province of Ontario as well. Thank you very much, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.